Can I put my apologies in to have to leave at 11:30? I've got a 90-year-old sister who had a bad fall on Tuesday, and
Start the stream, please.
Live now, Chair.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Thursday, 7th of January 2021. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting, the first of 2021. Wish you all a happy new year, and let's hope this is a better year for everyone. Before I start, I would just, and enter into the first item, I would just like to firstly pass on a huge thanks to everyone. It has been a difficult period over the past 12 months, and it's also been a very hectic period over Christmas as well. Everyone will be aware that there's been a number of changes, a number of decisions made, and a lot of work that's gone in over this period. Some of it, I'm going to say, very last minute. Staff, teachers, support staff, everyone who has been involved has worked really, really hard up to the last minute to make a lot of changes. I want to pass on a huge amount of thanks to all of those involved. Many of them have been working very hard over Christmas when they should have been on holiday, and they really deserve a massive amount of thanks for all of their efforts to put things in place and to get things ready, and everything that they're doing at the moment through these difficult times, and everything that they did last year as well. So really, from myself and from I think all of the committee, thanks to everyone for everything that they're doing and everything that they have done so far. We'll move on to item 1, and that's apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please?
I've received apologies from Paul Rickard.
Okay. Any from the floor?
Mark, I have to leave at 11 to join Town and Parish Council meeting to make that meeting quorate. So at 11 o'clock, I'll have to leave you.
Okay, and thanks, Russ.
I've got a meeting at 11 as well, Chair.
Well, we've got a busy schedule today, so we'll move on. Okay. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. If we can go through those. And do we have any items to raise from that, please? Can we agree to approve those? Agreed? Thank you. Item 3, disclosure of members' interests. Do we have anything from that, please? No. Thank you. And item 4, forward plan of key decisions.
Thanks, Chair. The forward plan is there for members to note. There's an item on this month's agenda for facts, which will be considered before going to Cabinet on the 11th of January. And there should be one on there for next month as well, the school admissions arrangements, but it's not on this version of the forward plan, but that will be coming next month for pre-scrutiny. There's another item on there for corporate services and economic growth scrutiny, which is the budget. All members will receive an invite to attend the budget scrutiny on the 8th of Feb.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So we'll move on. Item 5, report the Executive Director, Adult Social Care and Children's Services. It's the National Funding Formula, and I'm going to pass over to Sue for that, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just highlight some of the items within the report for setting out the purpose of the report. So this is a report we bring on an annual basis for Cabinet to give them an update on the national funding formula and also the implications for Northumberland schools for the financial year 2021-22. The report really sets out the principles for the allocation of funding for the financial year, with the final funding formula values being delegated to the Director of Adult and Children's Services, as well as the lead member for Children's Services. And that's because the funding allocation comes in too late for us to put the detail within this report, but we still need to be have our decisions back to the Department of Education for mid-February, so it doesn't allow for the detail to be included in this report. Under the key issues, it just still remains the intentions of the Department of Education to introduce a national funding formula, but again there is no timescales have been published as when this will actually be implemented. So the local authority continues to have local discretion for the coming financial year to determine the individual funding formula values. So over the last 4 years, Northumberland has worked to make steady progress to bring our funding formula values in line with those set nationally, in order that we provide a smooth transition for our schools when the national funding formula is eventually implemented. So really moving on into the detail of the report, and you'll see a table set out on page 3 of the report that identifies where Northumberland isn't in line with the national funding formula, and you can see there's 3 items there that we're suggesting we concentrate on moving closer towards that national funding formula value. So you can see currently in Northumberland we pay an additional £62 per pupil in primary schools for the individual pupil allowance, and an additional £202 for every secondary pupil in Key Stage 4. But we do pay less in terms of our primary prior lower attainment, and you can see there that we spend £510 less. So that has been the focus of Schools Forum discussions over the last couple of months, in terms of where we will look to make the changes. So the values that you see set out in the table again are provisional, and they are based on the indicative DFE figures that were released in July, and as I've already said, the final settlement was due after the deadline for writing this report. So following the support of Schools Forum, they agreed that we would make progress gradually to the national funding formula, and agreed that a 2-step process for the current 2 years coming forward, and therefore we went out to consult with all of our schools in Northumberland based on that 2-step process. You'll see the responses from schools on page 4 and 5 of the report, but again they're very low response this year, with only 3 schools actually responding to the consultation. However, they were broadly supportive of the approach of Schools Forum to bring us those 3 formula factors in line over the next 2 years. In addition to those funding formula values, we also consulted around the transfer of additional funding from the schools block into the high needs block. We've done that for the last 3 years in order to provide some balance within our budget, and again schools and Schools Forum have agreed that we would continue to transfer funding again this year up to the value of 0.5%, and that detail will be worked out when the final settlement is there. The reason why we transfer that funding is really to support our SEND services and making sure that they're free at the point of need for Northumberland pupils. So that is what we use that funding for, and that I think Schools Forum will be having a report about the impact of that team and what they've been doing. That's having some great success at the moment. Again, hence why I think we have had support from Schools and Schools Forum. So as the report shows as well, the DSG grant, we estimated that based on the DFE indicative figures in July to be just over 202 million, which is an increase of 7.7% on the previous year's allocation, which does seem a considerable amount of money, but what needs to be taken into account is that a major part of this increase is due to the Teachers' Pay and Pension grant being put into the DSG, where it was paid separately previously. and again, I think since drafting the report, we have actually received now at the end of December our final DSG settlement. So this is not included within the body of the report, as we're currently still working out the detail. But we've received slightly more than the indicative budget, so we've got just over £203 million, which again is an increase for us in Northumberland, and we're just working through the implications of that and the impact that that will have on individual school budgets, and that detail should be available in the middle of February. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sue. So recommendations to Cabinet are to approve the proposals for the two-step implementation of the National Funding Formula 21-22, approve the delegation of the approval of the final formula values to the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Children's Services and lead member for Children's Services, and approve the transfer of up to 0.5% funding from the schools block to the high needs block. Do you have any questions or comments with regards to that report, please? Yes, Guy.
It's quite a technical report, Mark. It's just I'd just like to welcome the increase in funding and also note that we've gone with the recommendations from Schools Forum. So we're doing what we've been asked to do. So I would commend the report to Scrutiny.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, welcome the fact that Schools Forum's behind it and the two-step approach, which I think will be manageable, and you know, a tapered approach, which we need to do to make sure that there's no destabilization anywhere in the other end, if you like. But what I would do, Chair, if possible, or if you could, is make sure that in February the final settlement and the actual figures come to this committee for scrutiny, because I think it's important that while we endorse what's written here, we do acknowledge that it is based on what we expect, and there is a lot more work to do on what the actual will be. So not that I'm nervous about it, because the team always do a really good job at predicting. I don't know whether Sue and them have a crystal ball somewhere down in education department that gives them the information that they need to try and get it on the money, as it were. But I think it's important that we, as a matter of urgency, in February review that. It's going to be a really tricky year for schools, money-wise anyway, with all the additional pressures that they've had. So I think it's just important that we do that. Thank you.
John Sanderson?
Hi, thank you, Mark. There's a slight typo on point 9. There's a figure there. So you mentioned just over 202 million. You've got 2773 at the end there.
Yeah,
so
that's right. Apologies. Yeah, there's a row of 3. Yeah, there's a row of 3. Yeah, apologies.
Right.
You need to knock off the last 3.
The last 3, yeah.
The last 3, all right, okay.
It's not the first number, John. Apologies.
You can have a pint of beer with that one. Point 10, it talks about the the transfer from the schools block to the high needs block of 0.5%. I don't know whether we can, but obviously with COVID, that clearly wasn't expected. Was this estimate would have been put in pre-COVID, I assume? Do we need to put some kind of proviso in there? Because historically, we've always gone over that figure, I believe. We are likely to go over that again. We need to anticipate that that's going to be an issue. We've done really well over the last 3 years, or you guys have done really well in bringing that figure down significantly. This is clearly going to be a massive pressure currently on that. So do we need to put some kind of proviso in there?
Actually, we don't think so, John. To be honest, we are working through the detail. But again, you know, linking back to exclusions, which obviously this committee was very involved in, and again, we are doing really, really well. We've probably got 15 less exclusions at this point than we did this time last year. And obviously some of this funding and the transfer from schools block into high needs does support the work of those teams. So the up to 5% we feel is enough money, and it gives us enough flexibility in terms of those specific services. I think as other councillors have said, there will be pressure on individual schools, and very often that borne by the lack of pupil numbers. A lot of the funding now is based on the bums on seats, the number of children in schools, and therefore as school rolls fall, that's where the pressure comes on individual schools. But in terms of transfer to the high needs block, I'm comfortable that we can work within the 0.5% that we're predicting within the report.
Lovely, thank you.
So just picking up on what Scott said, is it possible for us to have the updated figures for the next meeting? Is there enough time for us to have that updated by February's meeting?
It might be a bit later, Mark, because we need DFE to approve our submission in mid-February. So
Okay.
we might be able to do it for March, which will be the final figures for schools rather than the February meeting. But yeah, we definitely can bring the detail back. It's just a question of timing between the meetings between February and March.
All right. Is that okay for you, Scott, if we bring it back in March?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any more questions to raise on that report? So we're okay to take that forward to Cabinet with those recommendations. Agreed? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so item 6 is a report of Executive Director, Adult Social Care and Children's Services, annual report of the Principal Social Worker. And I'll hand you over to Sue for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm sure you've read the report and note the issues which are key for us, and that's the impact of COVID, recruitment and retention, manageable caseloads and practice improvement. As you're aware, in January 2020, Ofsted provided a rating of good across the board for Northumberland Children's Statutory Services. We're proud of our workforce being recognised for all of the effort made to support the children and families of Northumberland. It's given us a good foundation to further develop our services and hopefully meet the many challenges faced in terms of the impact of COVID on service delivery. I mean, hidden harm has remained a real concern for us throughout the pandemic. Therefore, some children must continue to be seen in person, and this is completed using safe working practice methods. We also need to balance this with protecting the workforce to ensure that we have a workforce who is able to fulfil the role of safeguarding. Meeting this balance has been challenging. Following risk assessments, we've also used virtual means for some families, not dissimilar to today, actually, where appropriate, to stay in contact and fulfil our statutory duties. There have actually been positives of COVID. It's been really encouraging how well other agencies have worked collectively with us to ensure children are seen and safe. For example, schools. Virtual meetings of holding care team meetings have meant more regular attendance by partners, resulting in more effective information sharing in the best interests of children. After all, safeguarding children is a collective effort by partner agencies. I'll move on to provide an overview around recruitment and retention of our social workers now. We've scaled up the academy as this is working well in terms of providing newly qualified social workers with the tools and time to hone their skills. Due to COVID, unfortunately, the final year university completion dates have moved back. Therefore, we're not able to bring in the cohort we would have brought in March 2021. So we're relieved we previously scaled up to double during the last cohort intake in September 2020, when we welcomed 17 instead of 8 newly qualified social workers to join us. The struggle for recruitment of experienced social workers continues, unfortunately, as the pool is limited both regionally and nationally. Therefore, we're also looking for the August 2021 intake of the Academy to be larger in order to make up for us having to miss the spring cohort intake. In terms of future service delivery planning, we've taken other steps to recruit as well. July 2022 will see our first cohort of children's social workers via the BA Social Work Apprenticeship route. We've made a decision to source applicants from within Northumberland County Council staff. We recognise who have been loyal to Northumberland and have transferable knowledge and skills. For example, we've sourced people from through interview from our Edge of Care team, from Northumberland's Early Help Service and from our social work support assistants. We've currently got 6. 3 commenced the apprenticeship scheme in 2019, then another 3 commenced in 2020, and we'll continue to expand this opportunity on an annual basis. In terms of the turnover rate on the graph at 5.3.1a, as you're aware, children's social work nationally has a high turnover rate due to the nature of the job, unfortunately. This is also reflective locally. As per the graph at 5.3.3a, a number of social workers have left the profession altogether or left children's services in its entirety, which is a big shame. Our turnover rate is lower than the national average and is aligned to the regional rate. However, our rate is 2% higher internally compared to last year. There was a national restructure of the adoption service whereby regional adoption agencies were formed. This did result in a number of our staff securing posts there, which could explain the increase. In terms of staff actually in work as such, our frontline workforce is predominantly made up of females, and whilst every effort is made to provide opportunities for male social workers to join us, there isn't a significant pool to choose from. Therefore, we have a number of social workers per year who will be or are on maternity, and this also places pressure on the service. However, we do take the necessary steps to ensure cover is provided, and this is at times through agency staff. Going on to discuss manageable caseloads, all cases aren't the same in terms of complexity, and some children's cases require more input, and the caseload weighting tool reflects this. As one child's case can be extremely complex, whereas a family of perhaps 4 siblings may actually require less input. For example, home visits, or depending on their status, whether they're child in need or child on a child protection plan, or children open to court proceedings, which can take a lot of time to fulfill reports and complete the commitments of that. In Northumberland, obviously, we have to factor in the travel time as well, with it being a large area geographically. We'll go on to talk a little bit about the practice improvement now. We're well into our implementation of Science and Safety, which is our new practice model. And the focus of this model is to work with families as opposed to families. We're also conscious that our workforce are our most valuable commodity, and we're mindful of providing them with opportunities to continually grow as professionals and by accessing effective training opportunities, etc. But we're also very keen on prioritising the leadership pledge around everyone recognising their responsibility to safeguard. But in terms of quality assurance, we have a robust quality audit system in place, focusing on specific themes. Again, audits are carried out by managers at all levels and also senior social workers. And then this is also complemented by senior managers also partaking in practice days and practice weeks, as this provides the opportunity to focus on the richness of qualitative information as well as performance data. And this entails senior managers observing direct practice and also having discussions with the frontline staff. And that's always a good thing. Thank you for listening today, and I recommend the report to the meeting. And Chair, I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Now, the recommendations of the committee acknowledges the content of the report and the work that has been completed over the last year, and members agree the priorities and identify any further areas for scrutiny or challenge if required. So do we have any questions or comments? Wayne?
Mark, yeah, thank you, Mark. And thank you, Sue, for the report. And I remember when I in 2017 when I had the honour of becoming cabinet member Children's Services, that I had a meeting with Kath McAvoy, and Kath McAvoy told me about someone called Judge Hudson who didn't like us very much. In fact, didn't like us so much that Judge Hudson was quite vocal about telling other people how much they didn't like us. And that's completely changed. And it's completely changed because of the leadership of Kath and Sue and her team, because putting in things like the Social Work Academy has been transformative. And I've had the honour of meeting the new inductees and those leaving. I think I've done about 4 sessions during my time, and some of them were very young people, but they came in with a passion. But more importantly, they came in, and I think this report does talk about this, they came in and they got support. Previously, I don't know what had happened, but now under this scheme, they got support, they got mentoring, they got guidance, and they got the ability to do a job with a lower caseload than had previously happened. And that was one of the issues that Judge Hudson had about us, and that has changed. And that's thanks to Sue and her team, and the people who come on board to be social workers and care, particularly for our children, are an incredible bunch of people. And I think we should commend them and put that publicly. So I think the report is fantastic. I've got a couple of things which I just wanted to pick up on if I could. Sue's spoken about that grow our own model, about looking at transferable skills within the county council. So I'm just wondering if there's something we could look at, which the NHS have been doing, about calling people back. Is there something about a call back to care program where we go to retirees, where we could perhaps encourage them to come in, or indeed looking at people with transferable skills externally that we could encourage to bring back in to actually provide this support and care to our communities? So those were the main points I wanted to make. But Sue, honestly, I don't think people are aware of how much you guide that team and support the team and the people around it. So soft to you and well done.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. In terms of your comments about bringing people back, there are a couple of initiatives out there. Unfortunately, I don't know whether it's because of COVID, we've not had the uptake. The offer has been put out there. Social Work England have a scheme whereby, especially it occurred because of COVID, for people who have been or not re-registered within the last 2 years, they had an option to come back. They were registered automatically. There's also the other scheme, Social Work Together, whereby it was for people to come forth, social workers to come forth to support during this time. But unfortunately, we haven't had the uptake. I don't mean this disrespectfully. The odd people that have perhaps put themselves forward are not really regionally who we would particularly want to support. It's people who perhaps have moved around for different reasons, unfortunately, and we need the best. We need to protect our children, and we need to ensure that the staff complement that in terms of fulfilling that duty to a very high standard.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And just picking up on what Wayne said there, when we look at grow your own, and Ofsted are recognising the positives of that, we've had 48 just in the last 2 years, and
yes,
it was disappointing that last year the lockdown came a day before that cohort received face-to-face their awards, so they did miss out on that, but we're looking forward to taking more on again for the academy. If I can go to David Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mark. It's just to say thank you again to Sue. I don't envy the job that you and your team do, because I represent Newsham, and there are times when I meet up with some families who have, problems within the family, and I often come out the door and think, how in God's earth do social workers deal with those kind of problems? Because you walk away and you're still thinking about them hours later. And you can't, I think all social workers, eventually one day will be yatified, and you may not know what that means, but, all made sense, because the work they do is absolutely amazing. And it's not all about taking children away. It's about, making families secure and keeping families together. A lot of people think social workers only take their children off them. And that's the impression a lot of the public have, is that, oh, well, a social worker, they just come in and take children away. And that's not the case at all. It's just, that's the last resort. And I say that to people when that has happened. The work that they do with families is just absolutely amazing, and how they bring families together in this difficult time. And it's sad that so many people leave, but I understand why, because it's such a difficult job. And I agree with what Wayne's saying, it's trying to encourage more people to come in. I've got a granddaughter, she's only 15, and she's been saying for at least 2 years she wants to become a social worker. Whether that ever materializes or not, I don't know. I would encourage it, because I think, it's a wonderful thing what you do for children. But has COVID had a big impact on the work of the team? Has it made it more difficult, Sue?
It has brought its challenges, but what we've really noted is how resourceful the staff have been. And also, if you've noted from the report, that actually compared to last year, the sickness level went down. So, we're really proud of the staff. They've really pulled together and ensured that children are the priority. So yes, it's brought its challenges. It's brought its challenges in terms of being able to actually be out there a lot more and in family homes, supporting families, having direct contact with the children, having that opportunity to have that one-to-one with children. So yes, it has brought its challenges, but you know, we are really conscious that we're mindful. We need to make sure that we keep doing what we do. And I really do appreciate your comment, Deirdre, and also really look forward to perhaps welcoming your granddaughter in the future to the academy. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deirdre. Graham, did you want to come in on that one, please?
Yeah, the positive comments about the social workers very much appreciated, and obviously we'll pass those on to the staff. But just in terms of just developing Sue's points a bit further about learning from the pandemic, I mean, as Sue said, we've kept direct visiting throughout the pandemic, risk assessed, and the social workers have been, and other staff there have been very positive about doing that, ensuring children are safe. But we have a range of actions going forward, learning from the positives of the pandemic, and so picking up, for example, on the fact that our sickness levels have actually reduced somewhat, and some of the more flexible options of how we've been working, as well as some of the more creative ways we've been using of engaging the family. We've got a range of task and finish groups looking at how we can embed that way of working, supporting going forward, both in terms of service delivery, but also in terms of how we can best support and work with and maximise our workforce. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Kath?
Yeah, sorry, not to labour the point, but I know I said this on the last occasion, but from Graham and I, we do reiterate the absolute our absolute thanks to all of the staff who've worked tirelessly through this pandemic. They are a group of staff who don't get that recognition, both from our support staff, our admin staff and our social workers, our residential staff and our foster carers, who have worked tirelessly and stoically throughout this pandemic in order to be able to deliver services to our most vulnerable children. And I think what people don't know is actually our social workers are carrying on business as usual. They are going out and doing home visits to families. They are visiting family homes on a daily basis. They are doing direct work with children on a daily basis. They are taking children for appointments that they need to attend to, and do this without any issues being raised or any concerns. We obviously have robust risk assessments in relation to those situations, but I think that they often don't get recognised. There's lots of other professions, nurses, doctors, teachers, who are all in the media on a very regular basis about the sterling work that they are doing. But actually our frontline children's social work staff, no matter what they are, no matter what their role, are out there in family homes on a daily basis, delivering services and making sure our children are protected. So I know I said that on the last occasion, but I just really wanted to reinforce my thanks and Graham's thanks to all of the staff who have maintained that level of service provision over the last year. And you know, we thought that this year, the start of this year, we might, you know, there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, and there is, but we've got a long way to go before that light can be really seen. So we're continuing with that work in order to try and make sure that our children are protected.
No, thank you for that, Kath, and well said. Scott Dickinson.
Oh, couldn't find my button. Thanks, Chair. Couple of queries, Sue. In terms of the table relating to sickness, I'm assuming that that's from a period of time pre-COVID, because there's no isolation on there, there's no COVID on there. I'm assuming that sorry, go on.
Apologies. No, this is within that time. It includes part of that as well, because the report goes to September 2020.
Yeah.
So it incorporates that part of that as well.
That's quite interesting then, isn't it, that there hasn't been a significant impact on the team? Because I know working in the NHS and other places that, you know, we have had issues of isolation and team impact and things like that. And I guess I was just a little bit surprised not to have seen, with them being so active and out there, a level of potential isolation periods, even if it doesn't translate into the virus itself, but you would have expected to see a proportion of sickness in there relating to that. I think the other thing for me, which I mentioned in full council yesterday, which Councillor Renna Thompson referred to as well, which was the review of Adoption North East. And I guess that it's going to be imperative that yourself and others participate in that fully, and I hope that comes to this committee at some point. What I would say is that, you know, I've been reassured by Graham and yourself on a number of occasions around the most vulnerable children and parents or carers of those children who may use COVID and other things as a blockage for people to eyeball those children and have actual contact to make sure that we're absolutely confident that those children are safe, well, and being cared for properly. So in my usual fashion, I just asked for that reassurance again today, because I would expect to see a proportion of that on the issue list because of the complexities of some of the families that we work with, but it's not there. So, I mean, we can't have, unless I'm completely wrong, 100% contact and everything that we want during this period, and that some of those issues haven't been brought about by those families using the pandemic as a way to block some of the interventions potentially.
We're really conscious of that, and we have utilised virtual means we've RAG rated and kind of ensured that the most risk and risk children are prioritised. All children that are open to statutory services are important to us. We want to make sure that we have eyes on all of them and fully support families during this time because of the challenges that COVID have brought to parents around parenting, etc. So I can assure you, our seniors, Graham, Kath, they're very mindful of balancing it carefully to make sure the priority is the children, but to make sure that we have a flow of staff coming into the office. A lot of the staff are working from home when they're not out there, so that we're trying to do everything we can in our power to minimise any impact of COVID and how that can impact on the offer of an effective service delivery. And I'm saying thankfully and luckily we've managed to do that to date, and as we go forward, we'll ensure that we keep making the right choices in terms of balancing out who needs to be in the office and who doesn't, because the priority is seeing children and being with children. So that's what we'll focus on.
Thank you.
Graham, did you want to come in on that?
It's probably, yeah, the point's right, Scott, as well. But we are making sure that we're seeing children face to face across the board, and that we're risk assessing those visits. Now, we can never guarantee that children are 100% safe because all the range of factors that they implement that. But we have got a range, as Sue's also said in the report, of quality assurance, management oversight, performance management to make sure that we are ensuring that staff are supported and seeing children regularly in the most appropriate way. So, and if there are instances where we think that seeing the children is a challenge doing that virtually, we'll look at other ways of risk assessing that and how we can make sure it's done in the safest but most appropriate way for the child. So we've got a lot of oversight of each of those visits and how they're conducted.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Graham. And thank you for the report, Sue.
Thank you.
Any more comments on this? Do we accept the recommendations? Agreed? Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the Education Strategy Board update. And we'll move to David on that, please.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good morning. Do I have it right? Brilliant. Sorry, I'm got some reports up, so it's sometimes a bit difficult to tell whether everyone are with us or not. It's really great to speak to you this morning, and I'm really pleased actually to be speaking about something non-directly COVID related, which is also quite refreshing. You will have all received and read the report, no doubt, and I'll just try and move through some of the key elements, if that's possible. I think as an overview and thinking about the key issues impacting on Northumberland school improvement and schools collectively at the moment, is that there has been significant progress in recent years in improving the outcomes of the children and young people in the county. That there's been an upward trajectory, heavily focused across the primary sector, but also moving into the secondary sector in more recent times. And we've gradually moved up both national and the regional league tables. In terms of exclusions, both fixed term and permanent exclusions have reduced in the last 3 years. They were really significantly higher than we would wanted. We still obviously aim for a very low figure in that area. But as Sue mentioned earlier, actually, even through COVID, numbers have continued to fall in that area. We do still have some significant challenge around differences in performance of different groups across the county, and that disadvantaged youngsters continue to perform less well than their more advantaged peers, which is something I reported on, I think, to this committee in July. We continue to have that as a key working area. The general areas still requiring improvement, even though there has been, as I say, significant improvement in recent times, remains the narrowing of the disadvantage gap. Secondary outcomes are lagging slightly behind our primary outcomes, and they obviously continue. Hopefully, the work that we're doing across the sector will lead through to further primary outcomes. The exclusions I've just mentioned it remains a key factor in providing and improving the quality of alternative provision. SEND provision across the county, again, we have been making improvements in that area, but at our local area inspection, we did receive a written statement of action. That's been reported to this committee, I think, on a number of cases, and progress is being made with that. But again, that remains a key development and priority area. And our post-16 education provision is also undergoing a review and a refresh. That action is occurring quite rapidly as we speak, and we hope to be able to report back to you shortly on the improvements made in that particular area. One thing I think that has been particularly successful in recent times has been the way that the council officers, local authority as a whole, have been very effective in directly supporting individual schools. So where we have found that a school maybe, or a particular area has been struggling in a particular area, and we have been able to develop resources and put capacity into place to support individual schools, and that's been reflected in our Ofsted outcomes, where overall the percentages of good and outstanding schools are increasing, again particularly in the primary sector, but that is also leading through to improvements in the secondary sector, and that's really, I think, been one of the strengths of the central teams deployed towards schools around that. But yet we still find that some of the priority areas that I've listed remain difficult nuts to crack. So there's been certainly improvements in many individual schools, but yet we still look at some overall figures where we see some gaps where we'd like to see improvement. So this paper is suggesting and proposing the development of an education strategy board, this being a board to build on the foundations, if you like, that are currently in place. And really what we're looking to do is to enhance the input and the leadership from the sector itself. So rather than, so far the local authority have taken the lead in supporting many individual schools, we'd like the sector to come forwards and to support developments across multiple schools and all schools, and actually bring ourselves together in partnership a bit closer so that we can really meet the needs of every single Northumberland child and resident. So yes, the proposal is that we develop a Northumberland strategy board. We plan to monitor the priorities set by the Children and Young People's Plan and the enhanced services plans from the local authority. We're looking for schools and academies to lead by example, to demonstrate their best practice through the strategy board, and use the board to encourage the practice of other schools and academies. We'd wish to offer support and challenge to all partners. So the strategy board may well have a monitoring role, which would enable them to engage with any areas that weren't performing as well as we would wish them to do so. Lead officers would feed into this board and would also take direction from the board in order to set some of the priorities going forwards. The model and work programme for the board would start off by establishing and reaffirming a vision statement for the board. It is that collective sector-led approach where we bring together officers, schools, academies and other interested parties, colleges, businesses, community organisations into one place. I've got a list in the report of suggested membership for the board. It may be that through discussion we're looking at additional members for that particular board. The strategy board has proposed that they'd meet twice per term, receive reports and also give direction and guidance towards where they think the next development areas could be and should be. I'm happy to take any questions and also take any recommendations away from this committee.
Okay, thanks, David. So the recommendations are that the committee considers the development of the Northumberland Education Strategy Board. The committee agree the initial priorities and identifies any additional areas for the future, and the committee agrees with the plans for the board to convene as soon as possible. I'm going to go to Russ first, please.
Thank you very much, Mark. I have to go at 11, so I need to get in quick here. First of all, David, can I just say well done. It's an excellent idea, and I'm sure it will lead Northumberland forward by bringing this group of people together. A couple of questions on the actual suggested membership. I'm delighted to see young person representation down there, and the fact that it's representation, not representative, I'm assuming means there'll be more than one. What are the views on gathering the membership of that from that group?
I think we probably put that very early to the initial members of the board, actually, to see where there might be. For much younger children, it might be that we need to have some sort of advocate to work with groups, maybe exterior to the meeting, and then bring their views forwards. But actually, for some of our more either more able and or older and more mature students, they may actually be able to attend some of the meetings and briefings themselves and bring together their views and opinions and the views of their peers to influence on that.
Also, I mean, I know several of us here are also school governors. What's the view on recruiting governors?
I mean, we have a team that work directly with governors. I think again it might be down to maybe the actual chairs of governors' briefings themselves, where we could go to the governors and say who would they like to suggest would be appropriate governors to join. I mean, I suppose we've got to be slightly cautious on the numbers involved in the board. There's not too many people, but we've definitely got to make sure that they're representative either geographically or from each sector. But ideally, whichever governors would represent the governors as a whole on that board would report back to the chairs of governors' briefings each term to make sure that they are representative, that the views they offer is representative of all governors, not just their individual school or their individual standpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that communication channel is very, very important. It gets back down to the actual people who have got the school governors. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now go to Wayne Daly next, please.
Thank you, Chair, and absolutely fantastic to see this report. This was sitting in one of my priorities, which I used to constantly go on to Kath McAvoy about, and it's happened, and I'm delighted. And the history behind this has come from the learning that we did around developing the Education Challenge and the Joint School Improvement Strategy, which went through North of Tyne in July. So I'm pleased about that. David, to you and your team, I think you're unsung heroes, because I know I used to bang on about it constantly, but in terms of early years, in terms of primary, Northumberland has absolutely made its mark in terms of education nationally. We're top performing early years, top performing in primary. We've done and made some improvements in secondary. We've still got more to do with secondary schools, and I appreciate that. And some of that is historical, because many of those schools which are still not performing as best they could were historically underperforming and have not benefited from academisation as perhaps they could have done, but your team and Audrey, I know, is on to that, and we will get there. So, you know, commendation to all of the staff and the support staff who actually work around that. So I think there's lots of really good things in here. I'm pleased that the board is going to have some teeth to make recommendations and to learn from good practice. I think your point to Ross was a really valid one, that this is not going to be parochial. This has got to be education holistically in the round and for the county. So where really good stuff is happening in maybe Cramlington or Berwick or Hexham, that's shared and people learn from it and they can improve. And we shouldn't be ashamed of actually sharing really good practice across the county. And I think that's a really good thing. So I think this is excellent. What I would hope is that we would get regular updates to facts from the board to look at some of its successes. But I think its composition is an excellent one. And I think as long as people go to that board with a view of considering every child, whether they're in a primary in Cramlington, Blythe, Ashington, Berwick, as a Northumberland child, and we are all corporately responsible for ensuring that every single young person in Northumberland gets an outstanding opportunity. And I'm sure that's the basis on which the board will operate. And on that basis, commend this. It's fantastic. And I really look forward to this bearing results over the next few years. So well done to you, David, and your team, because your school improvement team has absolutely turbocharged some of the improvements in our schools. And I think you should be commended for that.
Great. I think Audrey wants to come in on there.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say, really, David has done a super job putting this together. We, as an education and skills team, have revisited all of the key priorities. Clearly, we've done that from a post-COVID perspective, but actually, we've really dug in to look at to see where the issues are for us in Northumberland, and they are reflected exactly within the terms of reference this improvement board. So actually, not only will it be about reporting into facts, this will drive the work of the team across everything in education and skills. It is thread to all of the staff performance appraisal documentation, so it's all joined up throughout. I just wanted to add that in just so that everybody has full awareness.
Okay, thanks, Audrey. Deirdre Campbell.
Thank you, David. Yes, it's a wonderful idea. The one thing that I'm impressed with as well is the fact that the exclusions have been reduced, and that's absolutely wonderful, because they always say, you know, a child excluded is a life lost, and I do believe that that's the case. And you know, the day that we see that there are no exclusions will be the best day for Northumberland. But it is a wonderful idea. I'm just wondering why it didn't happen a long time ago. It's not brain surgery, and I do hope it works. Now I'm going to ask a question, and I'm probably out of my depth in asking this question, but I'm just wondering, with the makeup of the board, is there at times when we engage with the private schools or not, or is there a reason for the fact that we don't?
There's no reason for not engaging with private schools. We don't have a massive private sector in Northumberland. There are private schools in Northumberland, obviously, and actually there's probably more private schools just across the border into Newcastle and so on. I think it's a valid point, you know, in terms of, you know, wherever the expertise is. I think we should be trying to tap into it and engage with that area of the sector if we can. Yeah,
I know there are, and I hate to say this, a few of my grandchildren go to private school, and I hear and see what they do, and you know, the ideas that float around within the school, and the ways that they address things, and it is different to how we do it. And I always think, why can they never come together and work together? Because at the end of the day, it's for the betterment of young people and children and our future. And whether somebody's paying a fee for it or not, we should be at least talking to each other and bouncing the ideas off each other, because I think every child in our state schools deserves exactly what they get in a private school. It's something I feel very strongly about, because I do see the difference. There's lots of the grandkids who are in the state schools and done very, very well out of it. And that's why I always wonder why people pay for it. It's, to me, I have my own opinion, but I think they do have some, it would be nice if they did work together and if maybe they were part of this.
Okay, thank you, Deirdre. John Sanderson.
Thank you, Mark. I was going to ask a predictable question, which is, could we have some trade union representation on it? But with Deirdre's last comment, I think I've got the answer. We have an excellent rep up in Berwick who has very close links with Longridge. I think Deirdre's guilt about working private schools, there's no guilt, Deirdre. My wife works in a private school, not a problem. I think it's a great idea, because I think one thing that private schools have got is they've got more flexibility than in the state sector. So they can kind of develop their own curriculums. So there are a lot of ideas within the private sector that I think we can share. So if we could have a trade union representative, obviously I'll have to discuss it with Lynn, whether it's one or two, but we could kill two birds with one stone, because we've got a guy up in Berwick, as I say, close links with Longridge, who would be ideal for this position. So my request is, could we have some trade union representation? I've got the perfect solution in mind for the private sector element as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Alan Hodgson.
Yeah, it's just picking up on that point there. I'm on a governing body, and the vice chair works at one of the main private schools in Newcastle, and I believe they've got an outreach program to liaise with secondary schools across the region. So it might be well worth making that link if you want to. But also as well, David, just on the point there about where you've said individual schools have made huge improvements with direct local authority support, but this is not the case with all schools. What have you found to be the key barriers there? Is it leadership? Is it budget implications? What is it that's stopping those schools, even though you've obviously put a lot of work and effort in from the local authorities' point of view?
I think, Alan, your first comment about leadership, for me, that's always been the core. Those schools with the right leaders can, despite significant other challenges, be it budgetary, be it socioeconomic, whatever, those schools are the schools that, with the right guidance, turn around rapidly. So I would say the pattern is, if there are schools that are bumping along just the wrong side of maybe a set of Ofsted outcomes, and there's some improvement, and then maybe a bit sliding back. The pattern is about the quality of leadership, and those schools where we've been able to enable it. Now, maybe one of the points of the board might be that, as obviously we're going to try and encourage the best leaders from whichever sector to take part in that board, that then that leadership, they could direct themselves and share that leadership to those schools that have struggled to hold on to or struggled to develop a strong enough leadership capacity within themselves.
Okay. Is that okay, Alan?
Fine. Yeah, fine.
Great. Do you have any more questions? Any more points to raise? Yes, Guy.
Sorry, Mark, I lost connection there just at the prime moment when I was going to speak. My super duper new internet doesn't seem to like the snow very much. But there's a lot. There's what I'm about to say has probably already been said, but I couldn't hear you. But there's an awful lot of good in this report. The Education Strategy Board was a member's priority from one of Wayne's cabinet members' priorities, and it's one that I've kept on and been pushing on as well, because while we have come up the league tables, we started from quite a low base, unfortunately, and it's been the leadership of our team and leadership within schools that has led to this improvement. But there's always room for more, and this board, when it gets together, will be pushing that. I'm going to raise this at cabinet level. I didn't actually notice this before, but the lead member isn't on the suggested membership of the Northumberland Education Strategy Board, and I think I should be, or if not me, a member. Certainly, a councillor should be on there, but I'll raise that when it gets to cabinet.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Wayne?
Mark, yeah, just very quickly, Chair, if I can. I think I mentioned when I was speaking earlier that this kind of does link in with the North of Tyne School Improvement Strategy, which was agreed in July of last year. And I think it would be relevant to add a North of Tyne rep onto the list, simply because the three local authorities, Newcastle, North Tyneside, Northumberland, are signed up and aligned to that school improvement strategy. It's just a point which may want to be taken on board.
No, well said, Wayne. So, as well as recognising some significant improvements within the report, I think there's been a good discussion there to take forward on a number of items that we could possibly include within that, of inclusion of further membership, a bit of clarification there. It seems like the terms of reference overall seem quite good. I mean, what I like to see in there is leading by example and offering support, and probably sharing experience as well. But I think there's some good recommendations, some good suggestions for inclusion of suggested membership there, which we need to take forward on there. So with that, and following on from that discussion, do we agree those recommendations for this report?
Agree.
Agreed. Thank you. And thank you for that report, David. So moving on, the next item is the tuk-tuk briefing, and it's David that's going to present that as well, please.
Okay, from talking about a report which was really very widespread and general, this is a very specific issue. And hopefully you've had a chance to read the report, and also there's a presentation. I'm not proposing to go through that now, but within your minutes pack, there's also a presentation which gives some fine detail on what tuk-tuk is. Basically, it's a safeguarding app for use in education settings. The safeguarding obviously is a key concern for all educational establishments and settings, and there's a series of national guidance and regulations which we would obviously want to uphold to the very high degree. There's a constant need for and development of all of our systems is when we hear the pupil voice in any key development of educational work. And this particular app, this particular device, this particular system is all about hearing the pupil voice. We will all be aware from different backgrounds and so on, but sometimes it is difficult for folk to speak out about safeguarding issues, and finding a safe place to discuss things is important. But actually, we're probably also able to reflect on sometimes social media and the virtual world, that there is sometimes less barriers for people, certain people, to speak about their feelings and the things that are impacting upon them. And so if we can understand people's views, understand pupils' needs, and give pupils an opportunity to have their voice heard and a safe place for them to view their concerns, then I think all of those things are particularly positive. Tuk-tuk itself was developed by Michael Brennan. He's actually, I'm not sure if he was born in Berwick, but he certainly lived elsewhere as a child. And did undergo, unfortunately, some bullying issues at a school in the south of the country. And he returned, I think it is that he returned to Berwick. And while he was at school at Berwick, really had a very different experience and a very successful time. But from that, he was left with this history in his own upbringing, where he wanted to do more, and he wanted to help pupils find their voice, particularly from a safeguarding and anti-bullying perspective. And so actually when he was at university, he came up with a great idea, and he's developed it into Toot Toot. There are a number of schools who over time have used Toot Toot in the past. It's not been widespread, but it has been used by a number of schools. We actually took some briefings from the Toot Toot team to all the primary school head teachers a couple of years ago, and the primary school head teachers were interested in the process and the tool, and felt that it was a useful thing. But actually, in the end, not as many of them signed up to it as I thought they might have done. And that was possibly related to the costs and the obvious budgetary challenges that are in place with a lot of our schools. Toot Toot's also not the only product of its type on the market. CPOMs is used more extensively probably across Northumberland schools as another product, and Couth is another product rather newer to the market, which is making an impact in a number of schools. One place where we can see Toot Toot being used very successfully, though, is with the Northumberland Skills Service. So really a homegrown internal use of the system. With that it's post-16 service really using this, and every post-16 learner has got access to Toot Toot. In the report, I've got some details about how many times it's been used, and also the sort of, it means that if somebody does have some particular concerns for themselves, then they can share it on Toot Toot, and it's monitored, and therefore mentors can get back to and respond to those comments and move on to other support services if at all possible. I think it is worth you having a look, if you've not done already, at the Toot Toot presentation, which came out in the agenda pack. And really, I commit the report to the committee for further comments and views, and possibly taking something forwards into the future collectively as a council.
Okay, thank you, David. Recommendations for this are that the committee consider the strengths and weaknesses of the app. The committee reviews the use and impact of the app by the schools team, and the committee gives consideration to any future use of the app in Northumberland schools. What I will add to this is I first heard of this when doing the work on the Exclusions task and finish group, and I'd never heard of it before, so I asked a little bit more about it and was really interested. At the time, I know the cost, as it says in here, was given as £800, although what I was given by former director Dean Jackson, I was advised that it could be negotiated, and there was an offer on the table at that time of possibly £300. So there's a potential for discussion, shall we say, over that cost. If you turn to the back of the presentation, the last slide on there is a comment from a pupil which says, "Every school should have Toot Toot. It's great. Why would you not have it? It helps all children at school and at home." And it's quite impactful there to say from a pupil, why would you not have it? A couple of years ago, I attended Democracy Day, a democracy session at one of the primary schools on my own area. And each class was asked to put forward an idea, a proposal of what they would like to see in their school. And one of the Year 6 classes was chosen out of all of the school. Their idea was chosen for, it was something slightly different to this, but what the basic idea was, they wanted something where they could anonymously put forward their ideas and their feelings to be heard with regards to problems and issues that they had. Now, that could be something which was minor, a problem of bullying in the class or someone's pinched me pencil, but it could also lead to something more serious, which could potentially involve the police and criminal matters. And on page 2 of this, at the bottom, it deals with, it says where we've dealt with 410 incidents, currently managing 9 which are open, 7 of those related to MASH, and we've had police involvement in at least 4 of these. So where we're looking at Toot Toot, it's also been explained that there's other options available. And I feel very strongly that we need to consider these in an environment for the modern day, rather than what was discussed through exclusions, where some heads say, well, we've got something in where, you know, they write down what the complaint is and drop it in a mailbox, and then it's looked at by a teacher, and then we have a discussion with the teacher. We're in more of a digital age now, and I completely appreciate that not every child has a mobile phone or a mobile device, but many of them do. As it was brought up by the Year 6 in the primary school, not every child feels comfortable with approaching an adult or a teacher and disclosing and discussing what their issue is. And they said themselves, not every adult feels comfortable with discussing that with a child as well. So being able to do this anonymously through an app, which children are probably far more adept at doing that than possibly us, is a very good way forward, I feel. In addition to that, I must say that I've got no doubt that in this committee, there are probably a number of us who underwent bullying while we were at school ourselves. And it probably wasn't addressed as well as it could have been. We've got far more options available now to addressing bullying properly. And that's bullying's only one thing that can be addressed, but we've got a lot more available to be able to address bullying in a far more positive way. And I feel that we need to pick up on this and do whatever we can with whatever tools available to take positive steps on that. So, having read out the recommendations, I would like to add a little bit more to say another recommendation is, how can we assist more schools into adjusting ways of working to support schools and children in a more effective and modern way of working to respond to issues? And with that, I'd just like to invite comments and questions. Guy, you've got your hand up first.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I would agree with everything you've just said, and I would agree with that additional recommendation. That would have my support as the lead member, that we look at different ways that we can bring this into schools. It solves the age-old problem that you often hear children say, if I tell the teacher or if I tell mum and dad, it'll just make it worse. Whereas now, if they can do it anonymously on this app, that additional pressure, or at least some of it, is taken away, and it's something we need to push on. I would also highlight that this is a real homegrown success story. I mean, I've known about this for quite a long time, because I did a bit of work in Berwick Academy a few years ago, and something they shout about from the rooftops, with Michael Brennan being a former pupil. And it's now the UK's leading app, anti-bullying app. So it's a Northumberland export that we should be using as much as we can and shouting to the rooftops about it.
Thank you, Guy. Yes, Liz. Liz Dunn.
Yeah, I just wonder, I mean, David said before when he was giving the presentation that a few schools had used it in the past. Am I right in assuming that they don't use it now? And why? What would be the reasoning behind that? Was it just cost or something else?
I think cost is a factor. Like I said, most schools on being introduced to it are very positive in hearing what Toot Toot does and how it does it. I think the possibly cost may be a factor, but I think there are also some schools that have got some other methodologies that work as well for them. So if they've got two things running, both with a cost, somewhere they've gone, well, we can cover all the bases with this piece of work or this piece of work. I think that's the way the decision process have gone through. I think probably the comment remark about trying to do everything we can to ensure every school has a digital solution to some of these problems, I think is probably a more productive way, the most productive way forward, in terms of making sure that we've got some sort of replication of the good work of Toot Toot, either Toot Toot or something else that's just as good that meets those needs. In that way, it would probably be a great outcome, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? So with that added recommendation to take forward, can we agree with these recommendations? All agreed? That's great. Thank you for that. I look forward to seeing that move forward. Thank you, David. So the next item is current performance, and we have Alan to present that.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, this is the 6th monthly report on the public-facing performance indicators and the financial position for children's services. And it focuses on how children's services is comparing with the national average. The key issues on the first page within the report are that children's services is performing well against the national averages, and that can be seen within the appendices. Where it's poorer, the report does detail the explanations behind that and the actions that have been identified by senior managers. It is worth saying that the indicators that are in the appendices are under review, and also that the financial position does remain a challenge. And section 5 within the report provides details of the performance information, but if I can just pick out some of the headlines there. For children's social care, the report does mention about there has been an increase in the numbers of looked after children over the last 18 months, but that increase has abated since the spring, and the numbers within Northumberland who need to be looked after are significantly and consistently less than the regional average. The staff within the leave and care service, they are remaining in touch with nearly all of the care leavers, bearing in mind that some care leavers would exercise choice not to be in touch. They do remain in touch with nearly all of the care leavers, and almost all of them are in suitable accommodation. As Sue's report has mentioned earlier on, there is the levels of staff turnover are less than the national average, and there is also relatively low reliance upon agency staff. And the report also makes reference to appropriate decision making for children who are on child protection plans. And actually, since this report was written, the numbers of children who require a child protection plan has continued to decrease, and is bringing us closer to the national average. The headlines within the education and skills section, which is in Appendix B, it does make reference, as has been mentioned earlier on within this meeting, about numbers of permanent exclusions, which are lower than last year, which is positive. Almost all parents are getting their first choice of school, but it does also make reference to the continuing challenges within the secondary school sector, which has been referred to earlier on in this meeting. As I mentioned, the report does make reference to the budgetary position as well, and where the pressures are within different parts of children's services. And for the detail, members can see the detailed narrative on the performance indicators in section 5 of the report and the appendices, and the financial information is in section 6. And I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. So the recommendation on this is recommend that the committee notes current performance and identifies any areas for further scrutiny. Do we have any questions or points to raise with regards to this report, please? I think it's really good to hear, as we've heard already at this committee, the percentage of parents getting the first choice of schools is significantly better than the national average. And it's well done to the work of this authority for doing that. And also, it was good to hear, Alan, about the, I know we've heard this previously, about the work done since spring to bring the figures down, and the hard work that's been done on there. Wayne?
Mark, yeah, just again, just echoing your points about this is a really welcome report. Without going into any specific detail on it, it's just an overview comment I want to make, which is this doesn't happen by magic. It happens because of the dedication and hard work and commitment and professionalism and expertise that we have in our senior leadership team at the council. You know, from the chief executive Daljet down through Kath McAvoy, Graham, David, you know, I can sit here and wax lyrical about all of them. This is a collective team effort, and the fact that, you know, we're performing well against national averages is good. It was recognised by Ofsted last year, and I think that is a commendable position to be in. There are some local authorities who've actually been put into special measures because of their children's services team. Ours is not going to be that way ever. This is brilliant. Well done, guys. All of you, seriously.
Yeah, completely agree, Wayne. Thank you very much. We okay to, do we all agree with the recommendations? Agreed? Great, thank you very much. Thank you for that, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, final item, or item 7, is the report of the Scrutiny Officer.
Thanks, Chair. The work programme is there for members to note and to comment on anything that the members want to add to the work programme. Just need to let either myself or the Chair know. I know obviously Councillor Dickinson's not here now, but I'll speak to Sue and we'll try and arrange a time probably in March for her to come back with the updated figures and give an update. There's a pre-scrutiny item will be coming to the committee again next month. That's the school admissions arrangements. It comes every year for the committee's comments. There'll also be an update next month on the winter support grant and the free school meals and what's been done over the Christmas period and what's going to happen going forward. And there'll also be an update on school exclusions. I know John Sanderson mentioned earlier about school exclusions, so there'll be an update on that brought next month. But you know, as always, if there's anything members want to add, they just need to speak to either myself or Mark.
Wayne?
Yeah, Chair, thank you for that, and thank you, Chris, for that. I'm just wondering, I mentioned earlier on in the meeting that we had the Joint School Improvement Strategy North of Tyne, which went through in July when I was on the Cabinet at that point. And it might be worthwhile perhaps just to bring an information item to FACS, just about what that actually looks like. The Cabinet member with responsibility for that North of Tyne is Councillor Richard Dodd. So I'm not suggesting that you need to necessarily bring Richard into a meeting, but I think it might be worthwhile, Chair, just to give an update on what that joint school improvement strategy looks like, just for information, because we have alluded to it a number of times in today's meeting.
Chair, if I could just add to that, we could probably bring an update in relation to everything that's happening north of Tyne in terms of the education situation. That probably will wrap it all up into one.
Yep, agreed. If we can plan that in or look to plan that in.
I'll speak to you about it, Kath, and we'll come up with a date.
Yep, great, thank you. Is that you finished then, Chris?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I have no urgent items of business. And so with that, I'll close the meeting and look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, everybody.